On today's episode, we talked about what hospice does, what you can kind of do to get ready when you're coming down to that wire,
It's a lot of Ben.
and a little bit of Nick.
Ben got confused on a lot of the Q&As today.
I really did get a lot of confusion on them. I thought I was answering them, and I realized I wasn't, so
He answered it, but not the way that the person wanted it answered.
enjoy the episode.
I hope you like it.
Roll the tape.
Let's talk about death, baby. Let's talk about grief and mourning. Is it argumental or existential? What's it mean to me? Let's talk about death.
Hi, I'm Benny Capal, and I'm a funeral professional.
And I'm Nicholas Capal, a psychologist.
Hey, Nick, let's talk about death.
Congratulations, you made it to another episode.
Today we're going to talk about hospice. So, Nick, I'm going to get right in here because I do a lot of work hand-in-hand with hospice workers.
Do you?
If anybody quite understands what a funeral director deals with families when they become intertwined, you do. And you do an amazing and impressive job. And for the sometimes short time that you're with these families, you mean the world to them. And I don't know how many times in the arrangement room there's a compliment thrown on one or many of you from hospice care. You do an amazing job, and all of us funeral directors, I would say, would tip our hats to you for all that you do. Also, you help a family get to the next step, which is eventually dealing with us numbskulls, funeral directors, and funeral homes. And I know that can be very challenging. I know a lot of times you probably are going into families where they know where they're going. They've been going to this funeral home for years and generations and all that. And then other times I know they have no clue. Maybe they just moved to this town, or maybe the funeral home that they've been going to changed or doesn't exist anymore. So I would like to thank all hospice workers. You are incredible and you do an amazing job. Now, I want to talk about what you guys can do, because I had the opportunity to speak with a hospice team. And we kind of did some back and forth, and it was really neat to hear, because I think we don't do enough of that. I think we just assume we know what each other do, and we don't know that at all. And so I think there's some little tidbits that we can both do on both sides to get the family towards the end stage, and then eventually have some of the information already taken care of, which I find with families that are dealing with grief, anything they can get done before is very, very helpful. I'm not saying a speedy thing is a good idea, but at the same time, if we can help them kind of get some information through and get a couple of their choices decided before, especially when the person is still living in hospice care where they can be a part of it, is very, very, very beneficial. I've yet again been with a lot of families that say, I'm so glad Dad went in and talked to you and your dad, or Dad had the opportunity to you guys came to the house. That's another thing too, as funeral directors. And we kind of alluded to this with the children too. If you're a funeral director and you know that there's a hospice family that wants to meet you, but obviously that patient can't leave bedside, give them the opportunity of going to their house and going through things with them. I find that experience has been very helpful to my father and his father, as well as to me too. And I think the families really take a lot out of that you're willing to come to their house, sit with them. You kind of, and honestly, it's beneficial to you because that's not the first time meeting them.
I think we touched on this one of the last episodes. It's beneficial for funeral director, I believe. And through the research that I've read, it's beneficial for the families to have a personal experience with the funeral director that they're going to be working with, because then they know you. They're not alone, because that's a big thing. A lot of these families, they just feel alone, isolated. And one of the things that I think is beautiful about the funeral industry, if the funeral profession, sorry.
It's okay. I think it's a good idea for funeral professionals to go out to the people's houses if they can help the families.
It's super beneficial.
It is. And you get to know the family, and you get to know the dynamic, and that's always nice to know in the arrangement, because families, just like everything else, are completely different. And some families, it's nice for them, not only just the person who is going to be passing on, dying, but the actual family to know, okay, when we go into that arrangement, this is who we're going to meet. Or his son, and so they got to deal with me. Sometimes.
I read something interesting the other day that I wanted to ask you about. So I read the other day that it actually could be beneficial for the family to argue during hold on. Let me finish my thought. It's beneficial for the family to argue in the arrangement because it sets the family dynamic back in place. So then you figure out who's the alpha, all that stuff, right? And psychologically. But more importantly, it's a great way for them to get the anger out initially.
I 100% agree. Sometimes you don't have that opportunity, especially with today, nobody lives by each other anymore. Mm-hmm. So you might have one son in Alabama, one son in Texas, one son and one daughter in Florida. So sometimes you don't have that. Sometimes you only have one or two. And it's usually the kids that live around here are usually in charge in that case. Usually, obviously, it's the wife or husband. But sometimes they have to still have the kids bring them because they can't move anymore.
Sometimes it's grandkids.
Sometimes it's grandkids. Sometimes it's cousins. Every once in a while, it's somebody that's just
a friend
because they don't have any family left.
Mm-hmm.
So it is nice. I will say this.
How nice is it?
I find that the arrangement conference is an interesting place to be because there's nobody around. So that's when you really see the family dynamics. You're absolutely right. Yes, you see the older brother who picks on the younger brother. Mm-hmm. You see the older sister that's in charge of all finances. You see the one that always just has some smart butt comment to make. But see, there's always that one, too, that's the comedian. Yeah. And his job or her job is to make everybody laugh once or twice. And in that case, when they laugh, and Dad and I always say this, if we can laugh together and cry together, if you can get that family in the arrangement room to chortle, and not fake, like, oh, I didn't like that, that was uncomfortable, but the actual, like
the things I do when you're talking.
They always say this, and excuse my French, but Dad was always a pain in the ass, and then everybody laughs, and everybody kind of goes on, and then after that, it's like the room feels 10 pounds lighter.
Well, it's a normalizing experience to get the family to go back into its original structure.
Very much so, and it really is nice.
It wants to stay in that structure. So when you lose someone, the family is lost because there's something missing. If Dad was the comedian, now you have a room full of sad saps.
I mean, look at...
And I hate saying that, but
deal with you, the sad
right,
sap
it's
serious.
It's
bronze and everything.
You know, they say, what, you can cut it with a knife? You know, that feeling in the air.
You can
cut it with a knife, that seriousness. I think that's where the family has to restructure.
Sometimes some of these siblings haven't sat in a room in 10 years. Or maybe they never
sat. Which is also another dynamic thing that they need to address before the funeral.
Hospice is nice because you do get the idea sometimes to meet these family members. Sometimes, especially the executor or the power of attorney. Now, I want to talk about that because that is something...
Hold on a second. How many people in hospice do pre-needs?
The problem with the pre-needs are an amazing thing.
Yeah,
but the problem with when it comes to hospice and pre-needs is sometimes it's a little too late. For everyone out there who doesn't know what a pre-need is, it's a way for you to go into the funeral home and pick out everything. Now, whether that means you actually monetarily do it or you just have Ben and Dave. Here is Dave is my dad. Here is an idea we had. Can we do this? Or when pastor or father comes in, these are the songs I want. Or just so you can either just kind of just throw a lot out there, like this is what I want, and so that way the kids, you don't have to, like, I want a wood casket. You don't have to say exactly what casket you want or pay for it, but you can give an idea so when the kids come in, I could say, here's Dad's folder.
Does that necessarily mean that the kids have to follow that?
No, whoever's in charge of paying is in charge of that.
Meaning that the person that's paying the bill could literally say, although Dad really wanted A, B, and C, I'm not doing any of them.
Correct. That usually causes problems, and nobody usually does that because obviously at that point they've been told. Mm-hmm. But there has been situations, for instance, and we're going to talk about this because I was just getting onto this with the will. You can put in your will in the state of Michigan that you want to be cremated. But once you pass on in the state of Michigan, you become part of the estate.
So property.
So sadly enough, think of it this way. If your wife is not alive or your husband's not alive and you have 4 children, all 4 of those children have claims to that property.
So it claims to you.
Correct. In the state of Michigan, you need a majority. So 3 of those kids have to sign off on that.
What if it was 2 kids?
So 2 kids means it's not happening. Because the problem that you're going to have is the other 2 kids can say, I'm in mental distress because I never gave you the right to
Wait a minute,
cremate my father.
No, I'm saying if you just had 2 kids.
Then you need all 2 because you need more than 50. So you need majority. So if you have 2, you get 2. If you have 3, I need 2 of them. If you have 4, I need 3 of them.
Okay, you just need more than 50%.
Correct.
Okay.
But every state is different. Everybody needs to know that. We can go through a little bit more on that, like the actual details of contracts and stuff at a different episode. But right now, let's talk about the hospice experience a little bit. I had the opportunity to be in a couple panels now with different hospices, and it's a beautiful thing. Don't take this wrong. Hospitals, you do a great job. In nursing homes, you do a great job. But it's not home. It's your house. It's your home. You're the most comfortable in it. So if you're giving your family member the opportunity to stay home and get to experience their last couple days, months, possibly years, because that's another thing. And I got to give, yet again, going back to giving hospice nurses so much credit, they sometimes give you dates, but they don't know. They do a great job of giving you an idea, but they could say 10 days, and it could be 2 months. We have had families that they had to rush in because they were really afraid, Dad was going to die in the next month, and they've lasted 6 months, a year.
Isn't that an interesting? That's an interesting topic. What do they hold on for?
Not only that, Nick, but I think the idea is, how do you as a family, we're told a week, and you're now at 6 months. I know the demand. I see the families when I go into their houses, and they look like they haven't slept for days. They look like they have basically been on 12-hour shifts with their father, with their mother, with their brother, whatever whoever family member it is, and they just look exhausted.
Yep.
And the hospice nurses do a great job. And sometimes you have hospice nurses stay the whole day. Sometimes you have them stay just hours. Sometimes they come in daily, every other day, medication prep. But the family members are still the ones that are staying up with.
Well, I think that's the beautiful part about hospice. It not only brings them back to their house, but it brings the family back involved, which is evolutionary. If we think back in times in history and stuff, that's just how it was always done. I think the hospice is a great way for us to get back to normalcy, right? To get back to, bringing back
normalcy?
Normalcy.
Yeah, I think you're pronouncing it weird.
Well, sure.
And you sound kind of weird there.
Normalcy?
Normalcy? It's not normalcy.
Normalcy.
Okay,
Normalcy.
So potato.
Listen, potato, washing. It's the same thing.
Ketchup, catsup.
Okay. Normalcy. Meaning that through time, we have always been community people, and I think hospice is a good start.
What about historically? Because that's actually what it is. We're going back to our roots of letting the person die at their house.
But if you're going back to your roots, then what does that become?
You got to do the wake. We got to bring in the ice. You put the ice in the middle of the
Still
the
funeral
living
directors
room.
involved. Still people that come in
funeral
and prepare.
directors. Before funeral homes, there was funeral directors.
Well, and realize,
embalmers.
even during those times, funeral homes existed. They were just existent for people that didn't have a home to go to.
Correct. They would bring. We still have them. We still have the old tables you'd bring to somebody's house.
But
and do the
it all
embalming there.
changed through the medicalization of embalming, because the whole idea is the reason why there's a special place to take the dead is to keep people safe.
Right.
I mean, that's really what it is. It's a
wakes,
medicalization.
You would have the matriarch or the patriarch make food for everybody. But anyways, going back to hospice, I think it's just the idea of, I can die in my own home. I can have the dignity to be in my own slippers, my own bathrobe if I want to be. I can have let's be honest, pets are where it comes in too. So if I can be in my own house and have Fanny Banny, Lemon Spanny right there.
Let's put a pin in that one, because I would love to have an episode of losing
with death.
pets.
Pets with death.
Yeah, that's a big
Pets with
thing
death.
now. It's a big deal now.
Feel free to leave us a comment if you want pets for death.
Vote on
We'll
it.
talk about that.
We get enough likes. We'll
All
go
right,
with
but
it.
hospice, going back to hospice is this amazing thing that does give people the historical thing to go back to their homes. They're getting taken care of medically,
Yeah.
while the family is able to help, and they have the family help too, because they have the family
Hamley.
administer things for them, clean.
Is it family eating ham? Hamley?
Hamleys. Nick, in the experience or education that you've had with the psychology field on this, how do you think the terminally ill person feels when it's getting down to that wire?
It's a great question. I think everybody's different. I think there's a lot of, when it comes to dying. Now, it's interesting, fascinating tip, and I'm going to put this out there. Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief are actually originally intended
For the 5 stages of dying.
for the 5 stages of dying. They were then thought, oh, it's the same thing of grieving too. Right. Okay.
That's
Good thing. We got
interesting
that
that
out.
it goes full circle, but yes.
We got that out. Just make sure the tip of the hat to
Elizabeth
Kubler-Ross.
Kubler-Ross, who is a Swiss native.
Yeah, she's.
And Nick and I come
Ben
from
and I are-
Switzerland.
they're Swissy.
Mother home.
So here's the tough part, right? I want to take you guys on a voyage here. If you can, close your eyes and just think this one through. So you're in the hospital. You have some sort of illness going on. Hopefully you're 86, 87. You've had a good, fulfilling life, and you've been just thrown the hand of, hey, you know what? You got stage 4 cancer. You have 2 weeks to live. Okay. What do you do with that? For some of us, I would say most of us, the first thing I would say is I want to go home. If I'm going to die, I want to be at home. I want to see my family, especially through this COVID thing. I hope they're not wearing masks. I get to, feel their presence, all that stuff, and just be a part of it, right? Feel like I'm alive as much as I possibly can. Hopefully I'm not dealing with a lot of pain, but even if I am, hopefully hospice will take care of that. All you want at that end is to be around people that you love.
And comfortable.
Doesn't have to be family. It could be pets. I know a lot of people, that is their family, is all pets. But just to be comfortable. Yeah, be as comfortable as you possibly can be in your time of coming to grips with the idea that you're going to die. And now you have a date, right? Most people don't have a date and when they're going to pass away. Now you have an idea that, okay, I have 2 weeks.
And Nick, I'm going to stop you. You can clarify this, but it's an interesting thought because we all know subconsciously we're going to die. But the idea of knowing that there is a
to know
small
a date,
window,
though. To know a date, it's a really good question. I've been asked a lot of, just by friends or.
Would you want to know the death date?
Would you want to know how you were going to die and when you were going to die? And my answer to that question is, depends on the day. but more often or not, I think my answer would be no, because if you knew you were going to die, you're going to live. People would say, I wish I did know when I was going to die because I would make sure I don't have regrets, right? But I think the most beautiful thing about being a human in general is through making mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. You are human. Hopefully you don't have a lot of dying regrets. But I think that I would just want to live knowing that I found love, knowing that I have a family, knowing that whatever my meaning to life, which for me it is family, it's always been family, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's someone else's meaning.
That's your meaning. That's
right.
your
I'm
Nick
clarifying.
meaning.
Nick Paul's meaning is family. To be able to support them, to be around them, have my own wife, have my own children, but also take care of my family, right? My family and friends, and that involves my friends. My close friends are my family.
How do you have somebody else's wife, though?
How do I have
You said I have my own wife.
I have my own wife. No, meaning okay, some people, for family, it doesn't mean getting married.
No, I understand. Just how you said it was very...
I fell asleep. Were you talking?
No, sorry.
But anyways, going back to what I'm saying, I think the bigger thing with these people is that, okay, now they know they're going to hospice. They know they're going to die, right? I think for most of us, we want to be comfortable.
Can I say something on this coming home? When you know you have a death date, that's where I do find a lot of families say this was the only time dad or mom ever mentioned what their wishes were.
Oh, yeah.
And see, I think that can be the issue is why aren't we talking about this earlier? Why aren't we talking about this when
I think
it's prudent?
To me, psychologically, I think there's a superstition to a lot of stuff. So I think a lot of people feel if I go see the funeral director and I set up things, am I already saying that I'm going to die?
Nick, I can promise you're going to die someday.
Absolutely, Ben. But me and you have a different perspective than most people.
No, I understand.
So
I
think
do understand.
when
I do get
people-
that. It's
people-
admitting that you are going to die.
Not only that, but I think a lot. Let's be honest. Do you get 23-year-olds coming in here for pre-needs?
No, I think
Why not?
I don't think there's any. Well, I don't think any of them have been. Most 23-year-olds that pass or more.
So who's coming in for pre-needs?
We're talking about 70, 80-year-olds or
So not
somebody who's
even
got
40 or
terminal,
50-year-olds.
and if they have terminal cancer. So
Okay.
they get told they got 6 months to live, a year to live.
So what I'm saying to you is, if
I don't want my kids to deal with this.
If pre-needs
I'm
are so important, like wills, okay. So think about it. I know some 30-year-olds that have done their will.
I do think it's like if they walk in the funeral home, you are stating that you are going to die soon.
So here's another thing. I was just thinking about this, and it's
Your
a
mortality is up.
It's a really good comparison. Every time I see my insurance agent, he is trying to, I hate saying this, sell me on, but he is,
Selling
but
you
in
on
a
more
good
stuff.
way, on life insurance.
Did you get fungus insurance?
I don't have life insurance yet, but my wife does. I finally I did it, right? I went through with it, but I think life insurance is a great example of, you go to a 20-year-old and say you need to get a life insurance policy, right?
Done.
And if you do it at 20 years old, it's super cheap, right? It's the same thing if a 20-year-old came in right now and did a pre-need. It's going to be way cheaper than when they're 80, 90 years old, correct?
Absolutely, but I'm going to throw a little caveat at you. At school, one of our last projects was to write your own obituary.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was so interesting how that felt, because even for me, it was eye-opening. Like, wow, that's your last. So maybe that's an interesting. Anybody out there who wants to try this, we would love to know how you feel about this. Try to actually write your own obituary at this point in your life, or
what would you want at your funeral?
maybe do the manifesting and write an obituary what you would like it to be like at the end of your time.
Well, I'm just saying that, like, maybe you don't go and see a funeral director, but at least you have somewhere written what you think you might
want to do.
want. Or give your local funeral director a call, even if you're 23 years old, and
Oh.
stop in.
And I want to talk about that too real quick, because I think that's important with hospice. Funeral homes, a lot of them have little things you could take home that just kind of puts everything in perspective. What you did, when you did it, when you got married, what are these important numbers? Where is your veterans out there? If you do not know where your DD-214 is, make sure you know where it is. Because that is always the thing that the kids just cannot find. Which the DD-214, if anybody's out there knowing, is a veteran thing that is an honorable or dishonorable discharge papers, and that we need that to get your flag and to get any military
markers.
Markers, but that's through the VA. But if you want to have a presidential certificate or anything that's important for veterans, you need to have that DD-214.
But I mean, even if you're not a veteran, you should
Your paperwork.
sometime tell your kids or someone close to you where your important documents are.
Who your father's name was, who your mother's name was, what's your ancestry.
Yeah, get your stuff in order, right? But again,
You should do it earlier, but
so you questioned me the thought of
I think you should do it earlier.
in what I would think if I was told I was going to die in 2 weeks. None of that's important at that point.
No, because it's already going to happen, right? It's already set in motion.
So the only thing that's important at that point for me would be family.
And that's interesting because we do hear a lot that, like, Dad stayed for 2 more weeks because he wanted to wait for his son to get home
Jimmy.
from Arkansas. And it's true. And I think there is a will or way. A lot of people, especially on hospice, will wait until after Christmas and after the New Year's because they know that's their last chance to see their family. Yeah. And I'm not saying you have to be Christian. If you're another faith and you have another special
any holiday or
the
kid
idea
being born
that
or
anniversary or anything, a
Yeah.
lot of people will wait because they know if I could just make it 7 more days, I'll be
my
able
kid's going to graduate,
to see
anything
that.
like that.
And that's and that's impressive to know that. Going back to that old silly saying, "If there's a will, there's a way." Sometimes it
Why is
does
that
kind of
silly?
seem. Because I think that's tremendous. So the idea that a human being,
Wait. If you say that's tremendous, why would it be silly?
okay, you're throwing terms on me.
Okay.
It's fantastic
There we go.
that a human being has
Surprising.
that a
Not
human
silly.
being has the will to stay.
What? It's survival of the fittest,
To
man.
stay
That's
here.
That's in our DNA, man.
So, and like, you hear a lot
Boy.
of families like, Dad hasn't ate in 2 weeks, or Dad hasn't talked in 2 weeks, or Dad hasn't opened his eyes in 2 weeks. And he's still there, or she's still there. And it's impressive to know how much do you think they can comprehend with all that pain, with the idea of, and what are they seeing? Because we're going to talk about that in another episode too, is the whole seeing the afterlife and having that death life crisis, afterlife crisis. But like, what are they seeing? What are they? I just heard from a family member there a couple of years ago that they were talking to their deceased wife and son that died years ago.
One psychological point I want to leave with you guys with is, hopefully it's not at this point, but if your parent, your grandparent, your friend, your family member, anybody is on hospice, hopefully it's not at this point, but make sure you go out and see them.
Yes.
Make sure that
Yes.
you try desperately to get home if you're away from home, because I can't tell you how many people regret not being able to see their parent one last time and say goodbye, or their family member one more time. And with hospice, you are given a second chance. You are told this person has days. So prioritize, if you can, to get out and see these people, because not only is it going to mean a world to you, it's going to mean a world to them.
And you might be thinking, it's going to be scary. I don't want to see grandpa, dad, grandma like that. Your imagination of what you didn't say or what you didn't do is going to be worse than the actual experience of going to see your loved one.
Well, and I think the imagination of what grandma might or grandpa might look like is going to be way worse in your head than what you actually see when you get there.
It is, and Nick and I had the experience of literally seeing our grandfather take his last breaths, and he was a very powerful, emotional man, and it was just very, it made me a better funeral director to see that experience, because I can actually say to families now, I don't know how you feel, because that's the wrong termination or terminology, but I can say I have done that. I have experienced somebody take his last breath. I've seen somebody wait more days than he should have, so he could say, or so all of his family could be around him when he passed.
It's so important to have those experiences. It's so important to
hang on to them and to share them,
and not to shy away from letting kids have that experience.
Right?
You know,
Absolutely.
that was a previous episode, so make sure you go back to that.
All right, we got some Q&As.
Q&A, everyone loves that Q&A.
Does grieving someone count when they're in hospice? I just called my grandmother. It took everything in me too. She really couldn't talk, but she did for me. I could hear the death as she spoke. I don't know if I can call again. Maybe I'm selfish. I will try again, but holy poop.
Nick, there's something called living grieving, where families have the opportunity, whether it's a good thing, bad thing, indifferent, to experience the already grieving process before the person has passed on. Here is the issue. Here's the ultimate issue. Families ask Dad a lot, and it's a very tough, because there's no right answer. There is no you're not doing anything wrong or right. It's just how your family deals with the situation. Is the person living or is the person existing? And that's a very tough thing, because what this person is saying is her grandmother's not there anymore. And she knows that it's very tough for her to experience a talk with her grandmother that she remembers, that's there and all that, is not there, right? So I think what she's trying to say is, I don't feel comfortable with her being in this position because that's not my grandma anymore. Right. And we hear that a lot. We hear that a lot, that this is not Rick anymore. This is people who get in like these horrible accidents, right? Who get into vegetative states. You'll hear that a lot in the grieving process while the person's still living. I just don't feel comfortable because this is not how this person would want to live. So then it gets into this tricky situation of, do you have the right to unplug this person? Do you have the right to let this person go? Me and you have an interesting scenario. I'm not saying that I wouldn't even know how to. I can tell you right now, I'd be a hot mess if I had to make this decision for any of my family members. But I will say it is tough when you know somebody's existing and not living.
Right.
They can't go on their tractor anymore. They can't go out to their balcony and see their backyard, their paradise, or they
Right.
can't go up north and hunt or fish or whatever they're doing. So I think that's what this grandson is saying is, I'm selfish because that's not the grandma I know.
Mhm.
The grandma I know was a happy person, hugged me, we played, we did all this, and now that is not the person that's the shell.
I
that's
would
talking to
challenge
me.
this person. One thing is go see them in person. It
That-
might be a whole different experience than trying to call them on the phone. Just try it. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be better or worse, but I'm saying it might be different.
And I'm guaranteeing it will be, because it's just like a phone conversation or an email, which
I'm
he's obviously
terrible
had
at
phone.
that. Texting.
Some people just can't. They don't.
They just
It
don't do
doesn't
well.
work well, and you never get the right communication. You can't see the person's eyes. Maybe you see her and you're like, okay, this is gonna be my last time. I want to remember her. How I remember her,
Or maybe you just don't, and that's okay too.
and that's
I just
hard.
would challenge you if you got the time.
We
shoot out there.
You hear that a lot, I'm sure, and I hear that a lot. Is I want to remember mom, dad, grandma, brother, sister the way that I don't want to.
But I also hear a lot that I wish I would have had more time.
That
All right, we got to
experience.
move on.
Sorry.
A lot of time there.
Can you
is
read
it-
this, or do you want me to read this one?
Is it normal for dead people to smile? My best friend died in a tragic boat accident. He was young and happy. Everybody says it's tragedy. I've never met someone who loved life as much and yet didn't fear death. Maybe because he worked with old people for a while. The weird thing is that he talked a lot about his eventual death. He told me that he believed that he had seen everything life had to offer and it wouldn't be terrible for him to die. He was very resigned to it. He was swimming in open waters and a boat approached him. I guess neither him nor the driver saw each other before it was too late. I like to imagine that for a moment he panicked and then he accepted what was going to happen to him. He was unconscious straight away and died in the ambulance. Today I learned that his dead body is still smiling. Can somebody please tell me if this is a normal reaction? Maybe the muscles relax, ? Or if it supports my hope that he accepted his fate straight away. I know it sounds strange, but he was a very intuitive person and not afraid of death. The question is, can someone die with a smile on their face and stay that way? Is what the question is.
Well, with rigor mortis, it would stay for a little bit, but eventually it would relax because rigor mortis goes
there we
out.
go. I think that's what they were asking.
So
but either way,
rigor mortis sets in usually between 6 to 6
I don't
to 8
think there's
hours, and then-
anything wrong with remembering him.
And maybe that was the.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Nick
Whether or not
Nick
it
was a
happened or not.
daredevil, so he was
Yeah.
out on his. He was doing a evil Knievel move, and he went out doing what he loved. So he died with a smile on his face. Is it a? What am I thinking of? Are you saying it like he actually because he didn't see him? So whoever told him that he died with a smile on his face could have been doing it as.
I'm not sure what question you are answering. You are so confused.
I
question,
learned that his dead body is still smiling. I learned he didn't see it.
right? So he's asked
He's asking scientifically, can you die with a smile on your face? Yes, but you can.
And
Also,
can it
can you
stay
keep
there?
it? I don't think you can keep it unless it's being.
But I'm saying psychologically, whether it did or not, I'm glad you remember him that way because I think that's the most important thing out of
Absolutely.
this. Last question here. Lost my dad to cancer 2 days ago, 3 weeks after he was diagnosed, 3 days after going on to hospice. I now have to sell his unfinished projects, and it's killing me. I'm keeping a 62 Falcon. Awesome.
It is.
That is pretty much done. We have a 65 Thunderbird, so good for you guys.
T-bird.
My brother is keeping a 71 F100 Highboy. We don't have the room for anything else, and I live 1,500 miles away, so just got to get stuff gone. So I'm going to go a different route because I feel like this person really wants to know about the guilt of getting rid of his family stuff.
Oh, because he was never told what to do with it.
Yes. I think that's what I'm implying from this whole thing.
Thank you, Nick, for bringing us back to earth.
You're very welcome. So guilt, I think, is a big thing when it comes to grief and loss, especially, with this person living, so far away. Obviously, they don't have the room to bring everything of dad's and go through it and, take the sentimental value of stuff. And I think that at the end of the day, I think the most important thing I would tell this person is, what is the sentimental value to you? it might have had different sentimental value to the other person, and not saying that their opinion doesn't matter, but they're gone. As much as we'd love to keep everything that mom and dad thought were important, I think the most important part of this whole thing is what's important to you and your siblings. What do you value from that relationship? If it was taking long drives in the 62 Falcon, which I can remember taking long drives with my dad in the 65 Thunderbird, obviously, I'm not going to get rid of that. That means means the world to me. However, my dad's Dracula collection, I might be like, sell it. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to live on. They don't have to live on. You have to live on. So whatever makes life a little bit easier for you to live on, keep. If stuff is just cluttering and getting in the way and stuff, get rid of it. Not saying that that's going to be an easy process, but I think that's what you're asking. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's your decision. And I think at the end of the day, if your father was alive, he would look at you and go, yeah, if it means nothing to you, get rid of it.
And he mentions, too, it's unfinished. And maybe finish it and then sell it. Maybe you'll get, that last experience out of it.
Well, he says he's keeping the 62.
Keep the Falcon. You get rid of the rest.
Which, by the way, the Millennium Falcon was the best
Millennium
ship
Falcon, it made
in Star Wars
Kessel
ever
Run
built.
and whatever.
5 parsecs.
Five parsecs.
So, anyways, we're nerds. But, anyways, back to you. Thank you for listening in. I hope that helped you with your Q&A. But, again, if you were the one that wrote this question and we did not answer it correctly, please write us back.
Feel free to please subscribe, please add us, please comment us, please topic us.
Like us.
Bring us in
Love
there.
us. Make us part of your family.
Feel free to DM us with your experiences with hospices.
And when we say DM,
or maybe you're a hospice itself. Direct message. Is what
I
it's
know,
called.
but we're not talking about Dungeon Master.
Dungeon Masters.
I mean, people might get confused with
if
that.
you have some good quality Dungeon Masters out there, Nick and I would like to know.
Just make sure you roll your D20.
And that's it. Listen to us on any of your podcasting devices.
Or just show up at the funeral home. We'll talk to you. Because we talk about death.
Because if you're not talking about death.
Yeah, you ain't living.